The crack of the whip silenced the crowd gathered in Timber Creek's dusty town square, but it couldn't silence the fire in Clara Abbott's eyes as blood trickled down her back. The year was 1873, and in this unforgiving corner of Wyoming territory, a woman's opinion was worth less than the dirt beneath their boots, especially when that opinion challenged the town's most powerful man. "Let that be a lesson," shouted Sheriff Walton, his face flushed with vindictive pleasure as he rolled up the bloodied whip. "No woman speaks against Judge Harrison's rulings in my town." Clara bit her lip until she tasted blood, refusing to give them the satisfaction of her cries. At 22, she'd already endured more than most, but speaking out against the unjust seizure of the Wilson family farm had earned her 10 lashes in the town square. Her dress hung in tatters across her back, the white fabric stained crimson. Anybody else feel like questioning the law today? Sheriff Walton scanned the silent crowd, his hand resting on his gun belt. From the edge of the gathering, a tall figure stepped forward. The crowd parted instinctively as Finn Rutherford moved toward the sheriff with the easy, measured gait of a man who never needed to hurry to make his presence felt. "I reckon I do," Finn said, his voice carrying across the square without him raising it. Sheriff Walton's hand twitched near his pistol. "Rutherford, this ain't your business." Public whipping of a lady for speaking truth. Finn removed his hat, revealing sun-streaked brown hair and eyes the color of worn saddle leather. "That makes it everybody's business." Clara struggled to focus through the haze of pain. She knew Finn Rutherford by reputation, a former Texas Ranger turned rancher who'd settled outside Timber Creek last spring. He wasn't a man given to town politics or socializing, but stories of his principles and deadly accuracy with a Colt had traveled far. "Judge Harrison's word is law here," the sheriff blustered, though he took a half step back. Finn replaced his hat deliberately. "The law doesn't permit torture, Sheriff, not even in Timber Creek." He turned to the crowd. "Anyone here witness Mrs. Wilson sign over that deed willingly?" Silence stretched, broken only by the distant call of a crow. "Didn't think so." Finn stepped toward Clara, removing his duster and draping it gently over her shoulders. His voice softened. "Miss Abbott, I'd consider it an honor to escort you to safety." Clara wanted to refuse to stand on her own, but her legs trembled beneath her. "Thank you, Mr. Rutherford, but I won't be run out of town for speaking truth." A ghost of a smile touched his weathered face. "Wouldn't dream of suggesting it, but those wounds need tending, and I suspect the sheriff here isn't finished with his demonstration." Sheriff Walton sneered. "The woman's got no family and no husband to keep her in line. Maybe the asylum in Cheyenne would welcome her kind." "With me," Finn said clearly, his eyes never leaving Clara's, "you'll speak freely forever. You have my word on that." The declaration hung in the air like a challenge. Clara saw something in his eyes that made her heart stutter, not pity, but genuine respect. She'd never seen that look from a man before. "I accept your assistance, Mr. Rutherford," she managed, her voice steadier than her legs. Finn nodded once, then surprised everyone by lifting her carefully into his arms. "My horse is this way. Anyone who follows," he added, glancing pointedly at the sheriff, "will find me less reasonable than I've been today." Sheriff Walton's face mottled with rage, but he made no move to stop them. Even he wasn't fool enough to draw against Finn Rutherford in broad daylight. As Finn carried her through the parting crowd, Clara felt consciousness slipping away. The last thing she registered was the steady beat of his heart against her cheek, solid as a promise. When Clara awoke, she lay on her stomach on a clean bed, her back covered in cool, damp cloths. Confusion gave way to memory, and with it came pain. "Don't try to move just yet," came a gentle female voice. "Those lashes need time." Clara turned her head slightly to see an elderly woman with iron gray hair pulled into a severe bun. Her wrinkled face was kind but no nonsense. "I'm Martha," the woman said, "Finn's housekeeper, though battle axe is what he calls me when he thinks I can't hear." "Where am I?" Clara whispered, her throat parched. "Rutherford Ranch, about 10 miles outside Timber Creek." Martha offered a cup of water, supporting Clara's head so she could drink. "Finn brought you here yesterday. You've been in and out of sleep since." "Yesterday." Clara tried to rise but gasped at the searing pain. Almost sunset now, you needed the rest. Martha's expression softened. What they did was barbaric, even for Timber Creek. Clara sipped more water. The Wilsons are safe at their farm. Finn sent word to them after bringing you here. Martha adjusted the cloths on Clara's back. He's got men watching their place. Judge Harrison won't try anything with Rutherford men standing guard. Relief washed over Clara, quickly followed by unease. I can't stay here, it's not proper. Martha's laugh was like dry leaves rustling. Proper. Girl, you were publicly whipped. I think propriety left town on yesterday's stage. Her eyes softened. Besides, I'm here as chaperone and Finn sleeps in the bunkhouse when we have guests. Why would he help me? Clara asked, genuinely puzzled. He doesn't even know me. Martha wrung out a fresh cloth in a basin of herbal-scented water. Finn Rutherford has his reasons, and they're his to share, not mine. The door opened, and Finn himself entered, ducking his tall frame beneath the doorway. He'd removed his hat, and Clara was struck by how much younger he looked without it, perhaps 30, with laugh lines at the corners of his eyes that suggested he'd once smiled more freely. You're awake, he said simply. Good, Mr. Rutherford, Clara began. I don't know how to thank you, Finn, he corrected. And no thanks needed. What happened in town yesterday? His jaw tightened. It won't stand. Clara tried to read his expression. The sheriff won't let this go, Judge Harrison even less so. Let me worry about them. Finn moved to the window, looking out at the sprawling ranch land bathed in sunset. Martha's medicinal skills are unmatched. You should heal without much scarring. Clara swallowed. What did I say about the Wilsons that was so terrible? Only that a man has the right to see paperwork before signing away his livelihood. Finn turned back to her, his expression grave. Judge Harrison has been forcing people off their land for the railroad's benefit. You exposed what everyone suspected but feared to say. It doesn't explain a public whipping, Clara whispered. It does when you're the only schoolteacher willing to teach the colored children alongside the white ones, Martha interjected. They've been looking for an excuse. Clara closed her eyes briefly. I'll lose my position. You already have, Finn confirmed quietly. The school board met this morning. The news should have devastated her, but Clara felt oddly calm. Perhaps it was the laudanum Martha had given her, or perhaps it was simply that after yesterday, losing her teaching position seemed a minor consequence. I should leave the territory, she said, more to herself than to them. You should rest, Finn countered. And when you're healed, you should decide what you want, not what they've forced on you. His eyes held hers. There's a place for truth speakers in this world, Miss Abbott. Even in Wyoming territory. After Finn left, Martha helped Clara sit up enough to eat some broth. He doesn't talk much, the older woman observed, but when he does, it matters. Clara nodded slowly. How did a man like that come to be here? Martha's eyes took on a distant quality. Finn came west after the war, Texas Ranger for a time, lost his wife and baby daughter to fever 8 years back. Something in him changed after that. He built this place, built it right and fair, but he stopped believing in much beyond his own code. Until yesterday, Clara murmured. Martha smiled enigmatically. Get some rest, child. Tomorrow will bring its own troubles. The days that followed established a rhythm. Clara's wounds began to heal under Martha's careful ministrations. She learned that Finn's ranch was one of the largest in the county, employing 15 men year-round, most of them former soldiers or drifters who'd found a second chance under Finn's straightforward leadership. On the 5th day, Clara insisted on leaving her bed. Martha provided a simple dress that buttoned at the front, allowing her to dress without stretching her healing back. Finn asked if you might join him for supper, Martha said, helping arrange Clara's chestnut hair into a simple braid. In the dining room, not your sicked. Clara felt a flutter of nerves that had nothing to do with her injuries. I'd like that. The ranch house was larger than she'd realized, built of solid timber with the kind of craftsmanship that spoke of permanence. The dining room featured a massive table that could seat 12, though only 2 places were set. Finn entered from what appeared to be a study, a ledger in his hand. He wore a clean shirt, his hair still damp from washing. Something about seeing him in this domestic setting rather than as her rescuer made Clara's breath catch. "You're looking better," he said, pulling out her chair. "Thanks to Martha's care." Clara sat carefully, mindful of her back. "And your hospitality." Finn took his seat across from her. "I received word from town today. Judge Harrison is claiming you assaulted the sheriff before he was forced to discipline you." Clara's hand tightened on her water glass. "That's a lie." "Of course it is, but it's his word against yours." Finn served them both from a platter of roast beef. "Unless witnesses come forward." "They won't," Clara said with certainty. "Not against the judge." Finn's expression remained neutral. "Don't be so sure. People have their limits, even in Timber Creek." They ate in companionable silence for a while until Clara gathered her courage to ask what had been on her mind. "Why did you really help me, Mr. Rutherford?" "Finn, you could have stayed out of it. Most men would have." Finn set down his fork, considering her question. "My wife, Rebecca, was like you, spoke her mind, consequences be damned." A shadow crossed his face. "Before she died, she made me promise I wouldn't let the world break my spirit. I failed at that promise for years." Clara waited, sensing there was more. "When I saw you in that square, refusing to break." He shook his head slightly. "It reminded me there are still things worth fighting for." The simple honesty of his words touched something deep within Clara. "I'm sorry about your wife and daughter." "Thank you." He cleared his throat. "I've had news from the Wilsons too. They'd like to see you when you're able." "I'd like that," Clara said, then hesitated. "What will happen when I return to town?" Finn's expression hardened. "You're welcome to stay here as long as needed. Martha enjoys the company and we have the room." "I can't impose indefinitely," Clara protested. "I need to find work, rebuild my life." "Actually," Finn said carefully, "I have a proposition. My ranch hands good men, but most can barely write their names. The foreman's son is bright, wants to learn, but can't attend school in town because his mother was Mexican. Others here could benefit from education too." Clara set down her glass. "You're offering me a position as teacher? Here. Room, board, and wages equal to what the town paid," Finn confirmed. "No restrictions on what or how you teach." The offer was unexpected and generous, too generous. "Why would you do this?" Finn met her gaze directly. "Because education matters, because those men deserve a chance, and because—" He paused. "Because I meant what I said in town. On my land, people speak freely." Clara felt tears threaten. After losing everything, to be offered not just safety but purpose, it seemed too good to be true. "I accept," she said softly. "Thank you." Something that might have been a smile touched Finn's lips. "Good. We'll start once Martha says you're strong enough." 2 weeks later, Clara conducted her first lesson in the bunkhouse, which the men had transformed into a makeshift schoolroom during evenings. 6 ranch hands attended, along with the foreman's 10-year-old son, Miguel, and to Clara's surprise, Finn himself. "Don't mind me," he said, taking a seat at the back. "Just making sure these reprobates behave themselves." The men laughed, clearly comfortable with their boss, though Clara noticed the respect in their eyes when they looked at him. Teaching adults who genuinely wanted to learn proved more rewarding than Clara could have imagined. Some needed basic reading skills, while others wanted to improve their mathematics or writing. Miguel soaked up knowledge like parched earth in a rainstorm. As the weeks passed, Clara's back healed, leaving faint scars that Martha assured her would fade with time. The physical pain receded, but the memory of public humiliation lingered. Still, life at Rutherford Ranch offered a freedom she'd never experienced: the freedom to speak her mind without fear, to teach without constraints. She found herself watching Finn when he wasn't looking, the quiet authority he commanded, the fairness with which he treated his men, the rare smile that transformed his serious face. She learned he read voraciously, his study filled with books on everything from animal husbandry to ancient philosophy. "Did you always want to be a rancher?" she asked him one evening as they sat on the porch after supper, a habit they'd fallen into as summer turned to autumn. Finn considered the question, watching the sunset paint the distant mountains. "No, wanted to practice law once upon a time. War changed that." "You'd have made a good lawyer," Clara observed. "Too impatient with fools," he replied with a hint of humor. "What about you? Always want to teach?" Clara nodded. My father was a teacher before consumption took him. My mother cleaned houses to put me through normal school. She looked down at her hands. They believed education could change everything. They were right. Finn's voice was soft in the gathering dusk. Their conversation was interrupted by the approach of Ryder's 3 men coming fast up the road to the ranch house. Finn was on his feet in an instant, his hand moving to the gun he always wore. "Get inside," he told Clara, his voice leaving no room for argument. Clara stood, but defiance flared. "If it's trouble from town, it concerns me too." Finn's jaw tightened, but before he could respond, the riders came into clear view. Clara recognized the lead rider with a jolt of fear, Sheriff Walton. "Stay behind me," Finn conceded, moving to the edge of the porch as the men reined in. "Evening, Rutherford," Sheriff Walton called, not dismounting. "See, you're still harboring our fugitive." "There's no fugitive here, Walton," Finn replied calmly. "Just honest folks on private property. Got a warrant for Miss Abbott's arrest." The sheriff patted his breast pocket. "Assaulting an officer, inciting unrest. Judge Harrison wants her brought in." Clara stepped forward despite Finn's warning glance. "On false charges, as you well know." Sheriff Walton spat tobacco juice into the dirt. "Ain't up to me to decide what's false, that's for a judge to determine." "The same judge who's stealing land for the railroad?" Finn asked mildly. "Seems a conflict of interest." One of the deputies shifted uncomfortably in his saddle. Clara recognized him as young Billy Parker, whose younger siblings had been her pupils. "Hand her over peaceful like Rutherford," the sheriff demanded. "Don't want trouble." "That's exactly what you want," Finn contradicted, "but you won't find it here. Miss Abbott remains under my protection." "Any charges can be addressed through proper legal channels with a circuit judge, not Harrison." Sheriff Walton's face darkened. "You're interfering with the law. I'm upholding it," Finn countered. "Something you might try someday." The sheriff's hand moved toward his gun, but the deputy named Billy suddenly spoke up. "Sheriff, maybe we should come back with proper papers," he suggested. "Circuit judge will be through in 2 weeks." Walton glared at the young deputy. "You questioning me, boy?" "No, sir, just—" Billy swallowed visibly. "Just thinking about what happened in town. People are talking, saying the whipping wasn't right." Clara felt a surge of hope at these words. Someone had spoken up. The sheriff looked from Billy to Finn, clearly weighing his options. 3 against 1 were good odds, but Finn Rutherford's reputation preceded him, and if people in town were already questioning the judge's actions. 2 weeks, Walton finally growled. "Circuit judge arrives on the 15th. You bring her in then, or I'll come back with enough men to take this whole damn ranch apart." "Looking forward to it," Finn replied with deceptive mildness. After the riders departed, Clara released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "They'll be back with more men before the circuit judge arrives." Finn nodded grimly. "Probably, but we'll be ready." "We can't fight the whole town," Clara protested. "Won't be the whole town." Finn turned to her, his expression determined. "Clara, do you trust me?" The use of her first name startled her. In all these weeks, he'd maintained a formal distance, addressing her as Miss Abbott despite her repeated invitations to use her given name. "Yes," she answered without hesitation. "I trust you. Then trust me when I say you're not alone in this fight." He took her hand, his calloused palm warm against her skin. Not anymore. That night, Clara couldn't sleep. The confrontation with the sheriff had brought reality crashing back. She couldn't hide at Rutherford Ranch forever. Sooner or later, she would have to face the consequences of speaking out. A soft knock at her door startled her. Opening it, she found Finn standing in the hallway, still fully dressed despite the late hour. "I apologize for disturbing you," he said formally, "but there's something you need to see." Curiosity overcame propriety. Clara grabbed her shawl, wrapping it around her nightdress, and followed him downstairs and out to the porch. The sight that greeted her stole her breath. Coming up the road to the ranch house was a line of wagons and riders, lanterns swinging in the darkness. As they drew closer, Clara recognized faces from town: the blacksmith, several farmers, the widow who ran the boarding house, and families whose children she had taught. "What's happening?" she whispered. "Justice," Finn answered simply. The first wagon pulled up, and Clara recognized Mrs. Wilson, the farmer's wife whose land had been the subject of Clara's fateful outburst. "Miss Abbott," Mrs. Wilson called, climbing down with the help of her husband. "We've come to stand with you." More wagons arrived, disgorging townspeople who gathered in the ranch yard. Clara counted at least 30 adults and several children. Mr. Wilson stepped forward. "After what they did to you for speaking up for us, we couldn't stay silent anymore. Judge Harrison tried to take 3 more farms yesterday." His weather-beaten face hardened. "We said no. All of us," added the blacksmith, "told the sheriff we'd all need whipping if speaking truth is a crime now." Clara felt tears spring to her eyes. "You risked everything like you did for us," Mrs. Wilson said simply. "Judge Harrison and his railroad friends don't own Timber Creek, we do." The blacksmith nodded. "We signed affidavits about what really happened that day. Deputy Billy is taking them to the circuit judge directly, bypassing Harrison completely." Clara looked at Finn in wonder. "You arranged this," he shook his head. "They arranged it themselves." "I just offered my ranch as a meeting place." His eyes held hers. "Sometimes people just need to know they're not alone in their fight." As the townspeople settled in for the night, some in wagons, others in the barn that Finn's men quickly prepared, Clara found herself standing with Finn at the edge of the commotion. "Why didn't you tell me you were organizing resistance?" she asked quietly. "Wasn't sure it would work," he admitted. "People are afraid of Harrison." "But not you." Finn's expression softened in the lantern light. "I've faced worse than corrupt judges." Clara studied him. "What you said in town that day about speaking freely forever, did you mean it? Every word?" His voice dropped lower. "Clara, I'm not a man given to flowery speeches or grand gestures, but what I feel for you." He paused, searching for words. "You don't have to say it," Clara whispered, her heart racing. "Yes, I do." Finn took both her hands in his. "When Rebecca died, I thought that part of me died too. I built this ranch, did my duty by my men, but I was just existing. Then I saw you in that town square, bloodied but unbowed, and something woke up inside me." Clara couldn't speak, could barely breathe. "I know it hasn't been long," Finn continued, "and I'm not asking for promises, just a chance to see if what I feel, what I hope you might feel too, could grow into something real." Clara had always prided herself on speaking her mind, but now words failed her. Instead, she rose on tiptoe and pressed her lips gently to his. Finn remained still for a heartbeat, then his arms came around her, careful of her healing back, drawing her closer as he returned her kiss with a tenderness that made her heart ache. When they finally parted, his eyes searched hers. "Is that a yes?" Clara smiled through tears. "It's a beginning." 2 weeks later, the circuit judge arrived in Timber Creek to find a town transformed. With 30 sworn affidavits describing both the illegal land seizures and Clara's public whipping, Judge Harrison found himself facing charges rather than presiding over them. Sheriff Walton was removed from office pending investigation. Clara stood outside the makeshift courthouse, gripping Finn's hand as they awaited the circuit judge's ruling on her case. "Whatever happens," Finn murmured, "remember you're not alone." The doors opened, and the circuit judge emerged, his expression grave. "Miss Abbott," he announced, "this court finds the charges against you were fabricated as part of a larger conspiracy to intimidate citizens and illegally seize property. You are fully exonerated." A cheer went up from the gathered townspeople. Clara felt lightheaded with relief. "Furthermore," the judge continued, "this court awards you damages for your suffering and recommends your immediate reinstatement as town schoolteacher should you wish to return to that position." Clara looked up at Finn, seeing the question in his eyes. These past weeks at the ranch had changed her, changed them both. The teaching position she'd established there had grown, with more hands requesting lessons and even neighboring ranches sending their workers. "Thank you, Your Honor," she said clearly. "But I've found a new calling teaching at Rutherford Ranch. I believe I can do more good there." The judge nodded, unsurprised. "As you wish. Court is adjourned." As the crowd dispersed, Finn led Clara away from the courthouse toward the small garden behind the church, a quiet spot amid the town's celebration. "Are you sure about staying at the ranch?" he asked. "Your reputation is restored. You could have your old life back." Clara touched his face gently. I don't want my old life back, I want the one we're building together. Finn captured her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. I love you, Clara Abbott, have since the moment you looked defiance at that sheriff even with blood on your back. And I love you, Finn Rutherford. The words came easily, naturally. For keeping your promise that with you I'd speak freely forever. Finn reached into his pocket, withdrawing a simple gold band. Then speak freely as my wife, if you'll have me, Clara's heart soared. Yes, she whispered, 1,000 times yes. As Finn slipped the ring onto her finger, Clara knew that the whip that had once silenced her had ultimately given her a voice that would never be silenced again, and a love born of courage that would last a lifetime. 5 years later, Clara sat on the porch of Rutherford Ranch, watching her 3-year-old daughter Rebecca chase butterflies in the garden while her infant son napped in her arms. The school she'd established had grown into a proper building with 20 regular students, ranch hands, their children, and even adults from town who rode out 3 times a week for lessons. Finn emerged from the barn, dusty from the day's work but smiling at the sight of his family. In the years since their marriage, the lines of grief had softened from his face, replaced by lines of laughter and contentment. "How are my favorite teachers today?" he asked, bending to kiss Clara before scooping up his squealing daughter. "We're perfect," Clara replied, meaning it with all her heart. "Absolutely perfect." As the Wyoming sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and purple, Clara reflected on the journey that had brought her here, from public humiliation to public vindication, from speaking out alone to teaching others to raise their voices alongside hers. The scars on her back had faded to faint silver lines, a reminder not of defeat but of the day she'd found the courage to stand firm and the man who'd stood beside her, promising her freedom to speak her mind forever. It was a promise he had kept every single day.